Laughter fades into unease. I was there, and I hated that day, every second of it, because what should have been a celebration felt like a performance wrapped in misery, the kind of royal engagement that leaves a sour taste long after the carriages roll away. And as the years passed, that feeling only deepened, because when you look back now, through the lens of everything that followed, that day didn't feel historic. It felt staged. And when people ask whether I believe the explanations, whether I accept the excuses, whether I buy the idea that a woman would fake something so intimate just to protect something real, my answer is simple: I don't buy it, because what if the most famous royal runaway in modern history didn't vanish by accident but by design? Not through secrecy but through strategy. Not through silence but through selective visibility, because when it comes to Meghan Markle, absence has never been empty. It has always been curated. And I traveled the world with Prince Harry. I enjoyed working with him once, but watching how he turned his back on his family, on the king, on the queen, on his brother and sister-in-law, something shifted, because while other royals live by duty, restraint, and decades of tradition, Meghan seemed to operate by a different code entirely, one built on optics, narrative control, and the careful blending of grievance with glamour, delivered not like a royal but like an actress hitting her mark, turning every camera into a confessional and every appearance into an event, faster than the palace could whisper the word protocol. And yet, the one moment the world expected to see, the universal royal ritual of a hospital step-out, the public confirmation that has followed generations of heirs, vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions. Because Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor arrived without the images that defined royal continuity, and Arthur Edwards, a photographer who had captured 6 generations of monarchy, who had preserved Diana's vulnerability and history itself in silver nitrate, was told to stay away, told explicitly, and that silence spoke louder than any denial, because when the same lens that documented royal humanity is barred from a moment of supposed authenticity, people don't see privacy. They see control, and when the cameras were shut out, the spotlight didn't fade. It simply moved. Interviews danced across screens. Documentaries wept on cue. Contracts stacked higher than centuries of etiquette. And it began to look less like a love story and more like a merger between royalty and the algorithm itself. And so the whispers grew. Not as declarations but as theories, not as facts but as questions people weren't supposed to ask, about movements, timelines, shadows, videos slowed frame by frame, about how bodies behave and how cameras lie. And when a clip surfaced of a heavily pregnant Meghan dancing in a hospital room, the internet didn't congratulate, it analyzed. Freezing pixels, calling experts, debating physics and plausibility, while the palace retreated into its favorite defense, silence. A silence that only fed the fire, because every unanswered question became oxygen. And when Arthur Edwards later confirmed that photographers had indeed been instructed to stay away, the theory didn't sound fringe anymore. It sounded enabled. And suddenly, this wasn't about one woman. It was about an institution that appeared terrified of an unfiltered image. Because the monarchy has always understood something crucial. Scandals aren't defeated. They're managed, archived, buried under protocol and polished wood. And when rumors brushed dangerously close to succession, the temperature dropped, emails vanished, statements dissolved into riddles, and somewhere behind the palace walls, the truth, whatever it was locked away beside the family silver. Because in royal language, never complain, never explain doesn't mean dignity. It means survive, and survive they tried, while the internet refused to forget, matching dates, comparing belly shapes, noticing contradictions, questioning doctors, hospitals, announcements that aged poorly, stories that didn't align, and a single anonymous tweet claiming surrogacy detonated like a landmine because no one ever formally debunked it. And in a system where lineage matters, where birth determines destiny, even a rumor becomes radioactive. And while officials juggled optics and damage control, Meghan polished a global persona bathed in Californian light, perfectly lit, carefully framed, impossible to verify. While back in Britain, royal watchers noticed something else, a photograph quietly missing from the Queen's Christmas broadcast, no announcement, no explanation, just an absence that spoke volumes. Because in that world, nothing is accidental, not frames, not furniture, not silence. And as hospitals declined to clarify, congratulating without confirming, denying without denying online, sleuths turned into historians, reconstructing spaces, matching tiles, dissecting timelines, while the official story remained untouchable, smoother than marble, harder than fact. And when voices emerged claiming pressure, warnings, careers evaporating after speaking too freely, it echoed an old pattern, one the monarchy knows well: loyalty enforced through consequence, truth managed through fear. And so the story never ended. It metastasized, evolving into something bigger than pregnancy, bigger than Meghan, bigger than Harry, becoming a referendum on relevance itself. Because in the digital age, a single viral clip can do what revolutions couldn't: make royalty look obsolete, make mystery look like manipulation, and make silence sound like guilt. And that's the real tension at the heart of this saga, not whether a theory is true or false, but why the world was never allowed to see clearly, why transparency was replaced with curation, why the most photographed family on Earth suddenly feared the lens. Because in the end, this wasn't about a bump. It was about power, image, and who controls the story when history collides with the internet. And as Arthur Edwards' words linger, we were told to stay away. One thing becomes impossible to ignore. When the crown looks into the camera and blinks, the internet doesn't look away. It zooms in, and what comes next isn't resolution, it's escalation. Because every time the palace presses mute, the world turns the volume higher. And the next chapter, the one that cracked the Sussex image wide open, didn't begin with a balcony wave. It began with a leak, and once that door opened, there was no closing it again. And that leak didn't arrive like a thunderclap. It crept in quietly, the way the most dangerous truths always do, sliding into obscure forums and half-anonymous accounts before anyone official could swat it down. Because this time the story wasn't coming from tabloids or palace courtiers. It was coming from the digital underground, where screenshots never die and deleted posts only grow louder. And what surfaced wasn't a smoking gun, but something far more destabilizing: inconsistency stacked. So neatly they looked rehearsed, timestamps that didn't align, statements that contradicted each other depending on which continent they were made on. And suddenly the Sussex narrative, once polished to a mirror shine, began to show hairline cracks. Because when people went back and replayed the footage, slowed the audio, reread the announcements, they noticed how often certainty gave way to vagueness, how facts dissolved into feelings, how questions were met not with answers but with moral. Lectures about privacy, and privacy, in this case, had become the ultimate shield, wielded selectively because privacy didn't apply to podcasts, documentaries, memoirs, or monetized trauma, but it did apply the moment verification was requested. And that double standard didn't just irritate critics, it galvanized them, because the internet doesn't respond well to being told what not to ask. And as more people dug, they noticed something else: the way allies closed ranks with identical talking points, the way critical voices were labeled cruel, racist, or obsessed rather than simply curious, and the way legitimate questions were reframed as harassment, creating a chilling effect that pushed discussion underground instead of silencing it. And that's where it metastasized, growing sharper, more detailed, more dangerous, because underground theories don't need mainstream approval. They only need enough unanswered questions to survive. And survive they did, fed by every non-denial, every evasive statement, every institutional shrug, until the story wasn't just about Meghan Markle anymore. It was about whether modern power could still dictate reality, or whether the age of curated truth had finally met its match. Because the more the Sussex brand leaned into emotional storytelling, the more skeptics leaned into forensic analysis, dissecting body language, medical timelines, protocol deviations, even lighting choices. And while defenders called it obsession, critics called it pattern recognition. And somewhere between those two camps sat the palace, frozen, because acknowledging the rumors risked validating them, but ignoring them allowed them to calcify into folklore, and folklore, once embedded, outlives facts. And so the royal machine did what it always does under existential pressure. It slowed everything down, delayed responses, rerouted attention, shifted headlines to safer scandals, hoping time would do what statements couldn't. Except time didn't erode the questions, it sharpened them. Because new interviews reopened old wounds, New footage contradicted old narratives, and every retelling seemed to introduce another variable that didn't quite fit. And when Harry's memoir arrived, billed as raw truth, readers expected clarity, but instead found embellishment, dramatization, moments that collapsed under basic scrutiny. And once the public caught one exaggeration, they began to question them all, because credibility doesn't fracture politely, it shatters. And when that happened, the pregnancy controversy, once dismissed as fringe, was reclassified as unresolved, a difference that matters deeply in the court of public opinion, because unresolved means unfinished, and unfinished stories invite sequels. And as the Sussexes continued to trade royal mystique for Hollywood exposure, something ironic happened. The more they spoke, the less definitive their story became, and the louder their critics grew, because this wasn't just about a birth anymore. It was about trust, about whether an institution built on bloodlines could coexist with influencer culture, and about whether monarchy could survive in a world where every claim can be replayed, remixed, and re-examined indefinitely. And then there was the quiet shift in tone from former allies, journalists who once defended without question beginning to hedge, to say things like unusual or confusing. Language that signals distance without confrontation, because in media, words matter. And when defenders stop sounding certain, audiences notice. And that's when the palace's long silence stopped feeling strategic and started feeling desperate, because silence only works when authority is unquestioned, and authority, in this saga, was bleeding credibility one unanswered question at a time. And what made it worse was the sense that answers existed somewhere, locked behind NDAs, legal threats, reputational risk, and the unspoken rule that you don't embarrass the crown, even if the crown is no longer wearing one. And so the story continued to orbit a central void, a missing moment, a photograph that never existed, a confirmation that never came, a truth that was neither proven nor disproven, just permanently suspended. And that suspension became the scandal itself, because in a world obsessed with transparency, opacity reads as manipulation, and manipulation breeds distrust, and distrust doesn't fade, it compounds. And as newer controversies emerged, staff, bullying allegations, shifting friendships, professional fallouts, the public began to recontextualize the past, wondering whether this pattern of control, curation, and victimhood had always been there, hidden behind charm and progressive language, and if so, what else had been shaped, softened, or strategically omitted. And by then, the Sussex saga had transformed into something far more dangerous than gossip. It had become a case study in modern myth-making, where emotion trumps evidence, narrative overrides protocol, and perception becomes reality. Unless someone breaks ranks, unless a document leaks, unless a voice speaks without fear. And that's the tension now hanging over the entire story, because institutions can outlast individuals, but they can't outlast receipts. And somewhere, whether in an archive, a hard drive, or a conscience that hasn't yet been silenced, there may be something that ends the ambiguity once and for all. And that's why this story refuses to die. Why every resurfaced clip reignites debate, why every silence feels heavier than the last, because the question isn't what happened, it's who benefits from never answering. And until that changes, this isn't history, it's a live wire, humming beneath the surface of royal mythology, waiting for the moment when someone finally decides the cost of silence is higher than the cost of truth.